gonna continue on reading from where we last left off, which was just like the first chapter. So, if you're new, this is the Jesus Storybook Bible, and last time I think I just read like the first chapter or story. So, it's the table of contents. We read the story and the song, and then I think the beginning. So we read this and this one, and we last left off just before this story. So just to refresh our memory, I'm gonna read like the last paragraph. So pretty much God made everything and said it was all good, perfect, and right. God looked at everything he had made. Sorry, it's always a struggle to make sure there's no glare. Okay. God looked at everything he had made. Perfect, he said, and it was. But all the stars and the mountains and oceans and galaxies and everything were nothing compared to how much God loved his children. He would move heaven and earth to be near them, always. Whatever happened, whatever it cost him, he would always love them. And so it was that the wonderful love story began. Okay. The terrible lie. And this is story based from Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve lived happily together in their beautiful new home, and everything was perfect for a while, until the day when everything went wrong. God had a horrible enemy. His name was Satan. Satan had once been the most beautiful angel, but he didn't want to be just an angel. He wanted to be God. He grew proud and evil and full of hate, and God had to send him out of heaven. Satan was seething with anger and looking for a way to hurt God. He wanted to stop God's plan, stop this love story right there. So he disguised himself as a snake and waited in the garden. Now God had given Adam and Eve only one rule. Don't eat the fruit on that tree, God told them, because if you do, you'll think you know everything. You'll stop trusting me, and then death and sadness and tears will come. They couldn't eat from that tree. Slithery snake. You see, God knew if they ate the fruit, they would think they didn't need him, and they would try to make themselves happy without him. But God knew there was no such thing as happiness without him, and life without him wouldn't be life at all. As soon as the snake saw his chance, he slithered silently up to Eve. Does God really love you? The serpent whispered. If he does, why won't he let you eat the nice, juicy, delicious fruit? Poor you. Perhaps God doesn't want you to be happy. The snake's words hissed into her ears and sunk down deep into her heart like poison. Does God love me? Eve wondered. Suddenly she didn't know anymore. Just trust me, the serpent whispered. You don't need God. One small taste, that's all. And you'll be happier than you could ever dream. Eve picked the fruit and ate some, and Adam ate some too, and a terrible lie came into the world. It would never leave. It would live on in every human's heart, whispering to every one of God's children, God doesn't love me. He whispered some cunning lies. She ate the fruit. Okay. And it wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. A dove flew from Adam's hand. A deer darted in a thicket. It was as if they were frightened by something. A shell was in the air. Something strange was happening. They had always been naked, but now they felt naked and wrong, and they didn't want anyone to see them, so they hid. Later that evening, as God was taking his walk, he called to them, "Children?" Usually Adam and Eve loved to hear God's voice and would run to him, but this time they ran away from him and hid in the shadows. Where are you? God called. Hiding? Adam said. We're afraid of you. Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat? God asked them. Adam said, Eve made me do it. What have you done? God asked. Eve said, the serpent made me do it. And terrible pain came into God's heart. His children hadn't just broken the one rule they had broken God's heart. They had broken their wonderful relationship with him, and now he knew everything else would break. God's creation would start to unravel and come undone and go wrong. From now on, everything would die, even though it was supposed to last forever. You see, sin had come into God's perfect world, and it would never leave. God's children would be always running away from him and hiding in the dark. Their hearts would break now and never work properly again. God couldn't let his children live forever, not in such pain, not without him. There was only one way to protect them. You will have to leave the garden now, God told his children, his eyes filling with tears. This is no longer your true home. It's not the place for you anymore. To leave. All the animals were like, "Oh." But before they left the garden, God made clothes for his children to cover them. He gently clothed them, and then he sent them away on a long, long journey out of the garden, out of their home. Well, in another story, it would all be over, and that would have been the end. But, oh, that's exactly what it says. But not in this story. God loved his children too much to let the story end there. Even though he knew he would suffer, God had a plan, a magnificent dream. One day he would get his children back. One day he would make the world their perfect home again. And one day he would wipe away every tear from their eyes. You see, no matter what, in spite of everything, God would love his children with a never-stopping, never-giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. And though they would forget him and run from him, deep in their hearts, God's children would miss him, always, and long for him. Lost children yearning for their home. Before they left the garden, God whispered a promise to Adam and Eve. It will not always be so. I will come to rescue you, and when I do, I'm going to do battle against the snake. I'll get rid of the sin and the dark and the sadness you let in here. I'm coming back for you. And he would. One day, God himself would come. He said, I will come back to rescue you. They won't have to be sad forever. A new beginning. Time passed, and many people filled the earth. So this is from Genesis 6 to 9. It's Noah. Time passed, and many people filled the earth. Everyone everywhere had forgotten about God and were only doing bad things all the time. God's heart was filled with pain when he saw what had happened to the world that he loved. Everywhere was disease and death and destruction, all the things God hates most. Now Noah was God's friend, which was odd in those days because no one else was. Noah listened to God. He talked to God. He just loved being with God like you do with your best friend. Noah, God said, things have gone wrong. People have filled my world with hate instead of love. They are destroying themselves, and each other, in my world. I must stop them. First, we'll build an ark. Do you know how to build an ark? Neither did Noah. Luckily, God knew, and he would show him. God showed Noah how to build the ark. It might not have been blueprints like that, but it's just a little illustration. A storm is coming, God told Noah, but I will rescue you. I promise. I'll send the animals to you, ones that creep and crawl and slither and slime and gallop and hop and bound and climb. And don't forget to pack everyone's food. The storm was going to wash away all the hate and sadness and everything that had gone wrong and make the world clean again. God had thought up a way to keep Noah safe, but Noah would have to trust God and do exactly what God told him. So Noah built an ark, short for very large boat. Noah's neighbors came out to watch, and point and laugh because they didn't believe Noah about the boat or the storm or needing to be rescued. And Noah must have looked rather silly. His boat was in the desert, and the desert was nowhere near the sea, and there wasn't even a cloud in the sky. Why would anyone need an umbrella, let alone a boat? So they thought he was ridiculous. They're like, he must be crazy. I can't imagine what that must have been like. People laughing at him. But Noah didn't mind. Got Noah and all the animals on the ark already. But Noah didn't mind so much what other people thought. He minded what God thought. So he just did what God told him to do. When the ark was ready, God said, "All aboard!" And Noah's family and all the animals climbed inside. Then God shut the door. Looks like a polar bear, an antelope, owl, toucan, giraffe, turtle, elephant, cheetah, anteater, pig, lemur. And it started raining. 4 minutes that joined up into hours, that joined up into days, that joined up into weeks and weeks, and the rain joined up into puddles, that joined up into rivers, that joined up into lakes, that joined up into a flood that covered the whole world. Their boat that had once seemed so big suddenly seemed very small, but in the middle of the huge storm and the crashing waves and all the thunder and lightning through it all, God was with them, and God kept them safe for 40 long days and 40 long nights. Finally, the rain had stopped. The sun came out, and Noah threw open all the windows. Hooray, everyone shouted. Noah sent his dove out to explore, and it wasn't long before she had brought him back a fresh olive leaf. Everyone knew exactly what that had meant. She had found a tree and land. The water was going down. Yay! So there's like these clouds and rain. And the blue boat. We don't know if it's blue, but it's blue on this page. Get that? Okay. My favorites. Okay. Oh, that's so silly. It's like literally balanced on the top of the mountain. At last the boat landed quite suddenly on top of a great mountain. As soon as it was safe, God said, "Out you come." And so they did, everyone skipping and dancing onto dry land. The first thing Noah did was to thank God for rescuing them just as he had promised. The first thing God did was make another promise. "I won't ever destroy the world again." And like a warrior who puts away his bow and arrow at the end of a great battle, God said, "See, I have hung up my bow in the clouds." That's so cute. So wonderful. And there in the clouds, just where the storm meets the sun, was a beautiful bow made of light. It was a new beginning in God's world. It wasn't long before everything went wrong again. But God wasn't surprised. He knew this would happen. That's why before the beginning of time, he had another plan, a better plan, a plan not to destroy the world, but to rescue it, a plan to one day send his own son, the rescuer. God's strong anger against hate and sadness and death would come down once more, but not on his people or his world. No. God's war bow was not pointing down at his people. It was pointing up into the heart of heaven. I've always said I feel like rainbows are a glimpse of heaven. I can never not be at awe when I see a rainbow in the sky. Shall we read this one, or should we stop here? We'll keep going until you fall asleep. Okay. A giant staircase to heaven. This is the story of this Tower of Babel from Genesis 11. Okay. A giant staircase to heaven. Noah and his family lived in the land, and his children had children, and those children had more children, and then those children had even more. Well, you get the picture, until there were lots of people on earth once more. Now, back then, everyone spoke exactly the same language, so you didn't need to learn Swahili or Japanese or anything, because you could say hello to anyone and they knew what you meant. One day, everyone was talking and they came up with an idea. "Let's build ourselves a beautiful city to live in. It can be our home, and we'll be safe forever and ever." Then they had another idea, "And let's build a really tall tower to reach up to heaven." It's tall. All the way up. Kind of looks like a cake. Okay. Sorry, I keep yawning. Okay. "Yes," they said. "We'll say, look at us up here," and everyone will look up at us. And we'll look down on them, and then we'll know that we are something. We'll be like God. We'll be famous and safe and happy, and everything will be all right. So they got to work. Brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher until it soared above the city, touching the sky. They built stairs in the tower to climb to the top. It was like a giant staircase to heaven. "Look," they cheered. "We're the ones. See what we can do with our very own hands." They were quite pleased with themselves, but God wasn't pleased with them. God could see what they were doing. They were trying to live without him, but God knew that wouldn't make them happy or safe or anything. If they kept on like this, they would only destroy themselves, and God loved them too much to let that happen, so he stopped their plans. Say no. Okay. One morning they went to work as usual, but everything was different. Their words were all new and funny. You see, God had given each person a completely different language. Suddenly, no one understood what anyone else was saying. Someone would say, "How do you do?" and the other person thought they said, "How ugly are you?" It wasn't funny. You could be saying something nice, like, "Such a lovely morning," and get a punch in the nose because they thought you said, "Hush up, you're boring." You couldn't even say "pardon" to check if you'd heard right because no one understood that word either. It wasn't easy to work together after that, as you can only imagine. People were always quarreling and fighting and getting in a dreadful muddle and becoming grumpier and grumpier until at last they were all too cross to keep on building and just had to stop. After that, people scattered all over the world, which is how we ended up with so many different languages to this day. You see, God knew, however high they reached, however hard they tried, people could never get back to heaven by themselves. People didn't need a staircase, they needed a rescuer. Because the way back to heaven wasn't a staircase, it was a person. People could never reach up to heaven, so heaven would have to come down to them, and one day it would. Birth. Oh. Son of laughter. Maybe we'll do just one. This is from Genesis 12 through 21. God's special promise to Abraham, son of laughter. Okay. Years passed and things didn't get any better. People were still just as cruel and mean to one another. They still got sick and died. God's world was still full of tears. It was never meant to be like this. But God was getting ready to do something about it. He was going to make all the wrong things right. And he was going to do it through a family. Abraham, God said, how many stars are there? God was about to tell his friend a wonderful secret. Let me see, Abraham said, rolling up his sleeves. But have you ever tried counting the stars? Then you know how hard it is. 993, 994, 999. Uh-oh, no way. Wait, 1, 2. Of course he kept losing count. Too many, he said. Stars, but there's just too many. So many little stars. Well, they're not very little, but they look little to us. Guess what? God laughed. I will give you so many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren you won't be able to count them either. Abraham couldn't help giggling. It's such a wonderful idea, but he stopped himself. How could he have a family? Don't be silly, he didn't have any children, let alone grandchildren. He wiped away a tear. Anyway, it was far too late for him to start having babies at his age. He was 99 years old. What could God mean? Abraham, God said, believe me. And then God told Abraham his secret rescue plan. Abraham, I will make your family very big, God promised, until one day your family will come to number more than even all the stars in the sky. Abraham looked up at the dark night sky thick with stars. You will be my special family, my people, and through you, everyone on earth will be blessed. That's conversation with Abraham, and then there's a picture of Sarah over here. It was incredible. It was an incredible promise. God was going to rescue the world through Abraham's family. One of his great-great-great-great-grandchildren would be the child, the promised one, the rescuer. But it's too wonderful, Abraham said. How can it be true? Is anything too good to be true? God asked. Is anything too wonderful for me? So Abraham trusted what God said more than what his eyes could see, and he believed. Now when Abraham's wife Sarah heard God's promise, she just laughed to herself. But it wasn't a happy laugh, it had tears in it. She'd always wanted a baby. Could her dream come true? Could she really have a baby when she was 90 years old? No, of course not. Don't be silly, it was far too late. Sarah didn't believe God could do what he promised. She'd forgotten that when God says something, it's as good as done. Of course, it was as easy for God to give her a baby son as it was for him to make all the stars in the sky. Sure enough, 9 months later, just as God had promised, Sarah gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Isaac, which means son of laughter. And Sarah laughed, but this time it was a glorious, happy laugh. Her dream had come true. God would do as he promised. He would always look after Abraham's family, his special people. And one day, God would send another baby, a baby promised to a girl who didn't even have a husband. But this baby would bring laughter to the whole world. This baby would be everyone's dream come true. It's Abraham and Sarah, a little baby. So it said Abraham was 99, but Sarah was 90. The present. I think we'll save this one for next time. Okay. Alrighty. So we'll put I don't have a bookmark, but page 62 is where we left off. The present. Genesis 22, that's a good one. This story is like perfect symbolism of Jesus, so I love that one. We'll save that for later, for next time. Okay. Alrighty. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you're able to fall asleep and get something good out of this right before bedtime. But yeah, the Jesus Storybook Bible. Every story